What should your net worth be depending on your age? This video is updated for 2026 and answers it all. Whether you're in your 20s and just starting your career, or in your 40s and getting your family started, or if you're close to retirement in your 60s, we have the data on those decades and everything in between. I'll also cover what your goals should be in order to set yourself up for a nice retirement based on where you are. As always, I'm going to leave timestamps below in case you want to skip around to your section. But let's get started with the decade of the 20s. The median net worth in your 20s is $6,689 as of the most recent data from Empower, and the average is over $127,000. Now, this is a huge disparity, obviously, because individuals with really high net worths are skewing the average upward. That's why I think the median is a better metric to pay attention to, because it represents the middle point of the distribution, giving you a clearer picture of where most people actually stand. Now, net worth is simply defined as the total value of everything that you own, your assets, and then minus everything that you owe, your liabilities. I personally track my net worth in a Google spreadsheet, and I wanted to give you guys a visual. So here's a very basic net worth calculation. You can see here you have 10K in a checking account, 20K in a retirement account, but you owe $50,000 in student loan debt. Therefore, your net worth in this case would be $20,000. So that's how you would calculate your net worth. Now, in your 20s, you want to be able to target a median net worth by the time you are age 30. So what is the net worth that we should be striving for by the time we are 30? Well, the answer is 52,000. That's because by the time you are 30, Fidelity recommends that you save 1x your salary for retirement. Now, since the median income in America is 52.2 as of the age of 30, we should be aiming to have that much in our net worth by the age of 30, if not more. There are 3 ways and 3 goals to attain that, in my opinion. Number 1 is to avoid any consumer debt. When I'm talking about consumer debt, I just mean any credit card debt, buy now, pay later debt, or even personal loans. In order to build a strong foundation for the rest of your financial life, you need to avoid any consumer interest rate debt of over 10%. I think student loan debt is okay if the interest rate is low. You just want to make sure you have a plan to pay that off in a reasonable amount of time. The second thing to focus on in your 20s is to target a savings rate of 15 or 20% if it's possible. The key to retiring on time and even earlier is just a high savings rate. So if you're able to target a 15% savings rate of your income or more, you're going to be able to hit that target median net worth by the time you are 30. So the power of compound returns in your 20s is so powerful. So here's a small table of savings rates of 5%, 10%, 15%, and 20%. Now, this assumes you make $60,000 a year. And as you can see, just by getting the average returns of the S&P 500 of 8%, by the time you're in your late 50s or early 60s, you will end up with at minimum a balance of $558,36, and that goes all the way up to $2.2 million. And all of these sums are actually bigger than the median net worth of someone who's actually the age of 60, which is crazy to think about. Goal number 3 in your 20s is to increase your skills or have a plan to increase your income, because I think your 20s are a really good time to experiment with a lot of jobs, hobbies, and methods to make more money. If you can take a class or certification to learn new skills to apply directly to your job, this is a really good start. I've seen people increase their salaries from $60K to $120K in a single year just by learning database management. Or similarly, you can think of ways to monetize certain expertise or advantages that you might have. So for example, if you knew a lot about building muscle, working out, and creating workout programs, there are so many ways that you can monetize that skill. You could do one-on-one personal training with people. You could become an affiliate of fitness-related products. You could start a website or newsletter that offers free knowledge and then eventually sells a product of your own. You could even start a private group or run live events for fitness-minded people to get together and learn. My point is that in your 20s, you really want to focus on how are you going to make more money eventually, or at least in your 30s. And that brings me to the decade of the 30s, because the median net worth here in your 30s is $24,058, and the average is $321,549. For the rest of this video, you will start to see that the averages get even more and more extreme. And that's because the really, really wealthy people keep skewing the average up so high that it's just going to be disconnected from the median net worth numbers. So I think the median net worth here in your 30s of $24,000 is much more doable and probably not difficult for a lot of you guys watching this video. However, it's on this channel that my goal is to have you guys overshoot this goal by so much that you are comfortably ahead of the median statistics. The uncomfortable truth is that if you just stick with the median numbers, by the time you retire, you'll have about $290 to $300,000 as a median net worth. And that's just not really enough to have a comfortable retirement, in my opinion. To make sure that we're on track for being comfortable in our 30s, let's stick with Fidelity's rule of thumb for now. And that means by the time you are at the end of your 30s, your recommended net worth should be 3x your salary. Based on the data, the median income in the United States at the end of your 30s is $61,970. So the recommended net worth based on Fidelity's rule of thumb is going to be $185,910. However, if you're making $100,000 per year by the time you turn 40, then I would say that goal should be $300,000, which is 3x your income. There are three big goals that I want you guys to focus on if you are in your 30s. Number one is to be debt-free except your mortgage. The idea is that in your 30s, since you're in your prime earning years, this is the decade to really start ramping up your net worth. The last thing you want at this age are credit card payments and other existing loans that are slowing the compounding of your wealth. We're still going to keep the mortgage because in our 30s, it's unlikely that most people are going to be realistically able to pay that off immediately. If you have a high mortgage rate, you might want to consider refinancing when the rates come down. And our goal of paying off the mortgage will be a target for the later decades in life. Goal number two here is to keep your lifestyle inflation low because the 30s are a decade where you start earning more money. And oftentimes what creeps up is that, well, you earn more money, you want to spend more money. So don't do that. Just make sure you avoid lifestyle inflation so that you keep more of your money for the later. Number three is to have a well-stocked emergency fund. So in our 30s, you're going to have kids to take care of, a house, and possibly parents to take care of as well. All of these new responsibilities could present emergency situations in which you need liquid cash. So what happens if your kid needs an unexpected surgery or your house suddenly needs a new appliance like a water heater, or on the flip side, you get an opportunity to invest in a business venture that requires you to have some cash? Because of this, you should consider having a well-stocked emergency fund. So if you're on the conservative side like me, I like to have up to 6 to 12 months of living expenses saved up. But the general personal finance rule of thumb is to have at least 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up in a high yield account. And if you're already there, then that's great. Now, before we get into our 40s, I want to tell you guys that I created a free 2-minute money quiz that helps you figure out where you stand financially. You just basically go to usehelm.com, you enter some basic info about yourself, and then you'll get a financial wellness score with some actionable tips and the website I created with a friend of mine. The data is kept private, and I hope that you find it useful. I will link to it down below. All right, getting into our 40s now. The median net worth in your 40s is $76,479, and the average, I will put it up on the screen, but it's definitely going to be less relevant now. To make sure that we're on track for being comfortable by the time we retire, Fidelity recommends that you save 6x your salary by the time you hit your 50th birthday. The median income in the US at the end of your 40s is $65,000, so the recommended net worth based on Fidelity's metrics is going to be $390,000. However, once again, you should just take your income. So if you're making $100K per year by the time you're 50, dial that goal up to $600,000, which is 6x your income. The 40s are definitely going to be the most varied decade among everybody watching. And that's because I feel like at the age of 40, everyone has something different going on. You either have a family with kids and they're preparing for college. You could be single and living that Leo DiCaprio life, or you and your spouse might have moved to another country to start brand new again. So with that being said, I think there are three big goals in this decade of the 40s that hopefully everyone can relate to. Number one is to have your big expenses accounted for. That could mean paying off your house, saving for a college fund, or just simply prioritizing your retirement. You want to figure out your top 1, 2, or 3 priorities money-wise and have them accounted for in your budget. So if you determine that paying off your mortgage by the time you are 50 is a top priority for you, you want to do the math on what that might look like. Does that mean you have to make an extra mortgage payment every single year? Or does that mean you can refinance when rates come down? Or does it mean you try to bring in more income or reduce your expenses in order to put more money towards your mortgage? Having a plan for your top money priority is going to be one of the biggest goals that you can do in your 40s. The second goal is to have your retirement number in mind. So I've made so many videos on this channel on how to calculate your exact retirement number. I will leave that video down for you guys in the description below. The idea is that you want to know what withdrawal rate you're going to be comfortable with and then work backwards to figure out where your nest egg should be by the time you retire. And goal number 3 in your 40s is to have an estate plan, especially if you have dependents that rely on you and you have assets that need to be distributed. I think you should really have one of these. The major components of an estate plan are a living will as well as a healthcare or power of attorney. And these will be documents that can state your preferences in case something were to happen to you. They aren't as bad to set up as so many people think. You can find templates online and then you can edit it for your own situation and then you can get it notarized, or you can just go to a trust attorney if you prefer something like that. Personally, I don't have an estate plan yet, but that's because I don't have a family or any dependent. However, if I were to get married tomorrow and I had some kids, this is something that I would probably do first thing. And this should definitely be on your mind in the decade of the 40s. All right, getting into our 50s now. This is the big leagues, guys. So the median net worth in your 50s is $192,964 as of the latest data. The average now is over $1 million. And to make sure that we're on track for being comfortable by the time we retire, Fidelity recommends you save 8x your salary by the time you hit age 60. Now, I would say that this 8x your salary rule is very important at this level. As you guys know that when you're in the decade of the 50s, you have retirement in less than 15 years. So when Fidelity recommends 8x, I think that is at minimum what you should be doing, but maybe closer to 10 or 12x if you can. The median income in the United States at the end of your 50s, so at the age of 60, is $62,000. So the recommended net worth based on Fidelity's metrics is going to be $496.88 by the time you hit age 60. Again, on this channel, if you are making more, so let's say you make $100,000 a year, I'd rather see you at $800,000 and upwards of $1.2 million if you can. The 50s are also a very polarizing decade, and that's because by the time you hit 50, you might be an empty nester, finally traveling the world with your spouse. You could be helping raise your grandkids while still working a full-time job, or maybe you've started a business that you've been planning for 20 years, and finally, you are going Allen on yourself. With that being said, I think there are 3 big goals in the decade of the 50s. Goal number 1, diversify your investments and shift your asset allocation. A good portfolio mix in your 50s means that you're shifting your asset allocation more towards fixed income and bonds or investments that are less volatile. The idea is that in your 50s, capital preservation is becoming much more of a priority because you're going to be retiring pretty soon. I think at this point, you could even invest in some real estate, other businesses, or any other cash flowing assets that you can get your hands on. Goal number 2 is to figure out how much you actually want to spend in retirement. If you can figure out how much you want your expected lifestyle to cost one day when you retire, you can easily back into the math of the final goal number of what you're aiming for. Once you have that number, I think that sets up a really good North Star for the next decade or two of your work to make sure that you hit that number ahead of retirement. Also, depending on when you take Social Security, your retirement can vary quite a bit. So if you want further watching after this video, check out my video where I go into different sizes of nest eggs, and if they're enough for a comfortable retirement, I will link that below as well. Now, goal number 3 in your 50s is to start maxing out your retirement accounts, including catch-up contributions. In 2026, the 401k contribution limit is $30,500 per year for people over the age of 50. Compare that to under the age of 50, where the normal limit is $4,500. That's an extra $8,000 you can catch up with, and the IRA contribution is very similar. It's a $600 per year when compared to the regular $7,500 per year. So take advantage of those in order to beef up your nest eggs before the decade of the 60s, which is what we're going to get into right now. The median net worth in your 60s is $290,920, and the average I will put up on the screen, but it's around $1.576 million. To make sure that we're on track for being comfortable by the time we retire, Fidelity recommends you have 10x your salary saved by the time you hit age 65, which is around the traditional retirement age. The median income in the US at the end of your 60s is now $63,455. So based on Fidelity's metrics, we want to have $634,550 saved by the time we are 70. Personally, I would like to see 20x your income saved at this age. I know that's double what Fidelity suggests, so don't get too scared, but I think you can do it if you're diligent about your finances throughout your life. Having 20x your income saved makes it so much easier to hit your nest egg amount, and that's just plain math. Most withdrawal rate rules are between 4 to 4.7%. This usually means you're going to have about 20 to 25x your annual expenses saved up in a nest egg. But most retirees end up spending way less in retirement because their major expenses disappear. They usually don't have to pay for a mortgage. The kids are financially independent and they're no longer needing to save 15 to 20% of their income. In some cases, they've downsized their lifestyle as well to match their needs instead of trying to keep up with appearances. All right, so I think that the main goals at the age of 60 are the following. Number 1, finalize your retirement. There's no more guessing about how much you'll need. You should know exactly how much you'll need, how close you are to getting there, and have a really solid understanding of your financials. Ideally, at the age of 65 or 67 years old, you're retiring, you're taking Social Security, and you can enjoy the rest of your life stress-free. Goal number 2, focus on capital preservation. Once you're retired, it's all about making that money stretch as long as it can. And lastly, goal number 3 is to have your house completely paid off. I know that this is self-explanatory, but I feel like if you bought your house in your 30s, your 30-year mortgage should finally be finishing up if it's not already paid off yet. All right, guys, so that was the entire video. So let me know how much you have in net worth in the comments along with your age. And if you want that money quiz, I will leave it linked down below. If you want to watch my video on how to exactly calculate your retirement number, I will leave it up here on the screen. So check that out right there. Again, thank you for being here for another video. I really enjoy these and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.